One thing that's not part of this 20-point plan is a guaranteed Palestinian state. Does a ceasefire make a two-state solution more likely in the future? How do you get there? Secretary Clinton.
Well, yeah, Norah, I think it's way too soon to answer that question. I think what you have in the 20-point plan are steps that can and should be taken in order to alleviate the suffering of the population in Gaza, to reform the Palestinian Authority, to bring in new people, even from the Palestinian diaspora, who have expertise and experience in what's going to be needed to stand up a government in Gaza in order to meet the needs of the people of Gaza. The amount of work that is going to be required just to physically reconstruct Gaza, while the people of Gaza are still living there, which is a huge undertaking, but everything I've read and been told is that the vast majority have no intention of leaving, although that is part of the offer that they could go elsewhere. But most are going to stay. They need to be employed. They need to be put to work in doing all of the labor necessary to begin to rebuild. So you can't really look beyond the important outline of tasks that are in the 20 points. Now, ultimately, you know, I am still someone who believes that there has to be some kind of Palestinian entity, government entity that can meet the needs of the Palestinian people and live in peace and security with Israel. But, you know, that's not the first order of business. We have to deal with all these other concerns that are summarized in the 20-point plan.
I completely agree on an international side. I do think there are some things that Palestinians could start to do if they indeed do want one day to have a Palestinian state. Look, there have been several opportunities for a Palestinian state. The President Clinton's effort in 2000, in 2008, they were offered by Ehud Olmert something that they probably should have taken. But no less than Ariel Sharon, who was no softy on Israeli security, believed there needed to be a Palestinian state aside an Israeli state. So that's the end state that you want to get to. But for now, you're not going to get there. But here's what the Palestinians could start to do. They've got to start to recognize that Israel is going to exist and it's going to be a part of this Middle East. And that means change the lessons that you teach your kids about the state of Israel. Stop putting up maps that the state of Israel doesn't exist. Don't create another generation of Palestinians who believe that somehow the resistance is the way to peace and security. If you look at the West Bank, it's a kind of, even under occupation, a kind of functioning place, or has been. There have been Palestinian security forces that we started helping to build. Hillary, as secretary, continued that effort, and it's gone on and on. There are pieces, but the Palestinians could pay attention to those elements while the larger international situation gets to the place that you might be able to think about a Palestinian state. So I think the hard work of kind of putting together some of the pieces, that's what I would suggest to the Palestinians at this point. But it's going to be a while before you get to a two-state solution.
And I hear what each of you is saying on that. But if you talk to many of the Arab diplomats who say that their countries will be involved in rebuilding Gaza because they have the wealth, they want to know that there's going to be some endgame involved, that there will be a place for the Palestinian people.
Well, it's one thing to acknowledge
Norah,
that I'm sorry, Hillary, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Condi. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's one thing to acknowledge, as we both just did, that the right solution is ultimately to have Palestinians, as Sharon put it, governing over themselves. And that you have to acknowledge, because I don't see another solution that works. It's quite another to say, we know what the end state is going to look like, because there is so much work between now and then. So I would say to the Arabs, could you concentrate now on how to create the conditions for a Palestinian state? And that includes insisting on some reform among the Palestinians themselves.
I agree with that completely. It also requires that, for example, in the West Bank, the kind of settlement activity that has been permitted and promoted by this version of the Israeli government has to cease. Because if there's anything that would collapse what we're trying to do in Gaza, just by quickly sending a message that it's all for naught, that there's going to be continuing new settlements and settler violence in the West Bank, then that sends a message to not just Gazans and Palestinians, but to the international community that Israel isn't serious about pursuing these points that will move us all, we hope, in a better direction of more peace and security for all people. So this is a complicated, very difficult set of challenges. But I think, as both Condi and I would say, you've got to start somewhere, Norah. I mean, finally, we've gotten to the point where we have a ceasefire, and we're all hoping and praying it sticks. Where we have a path forward with very specific milestones along the way, and that it's going to require a very intense, diligent management by the United States government and other allies to make sure that everybody stays on this literally same page moving forward.